Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tapio Prosper Jimbazwa. I work with Innovation Village for Young African Minds, and today we'd like to welcome you all to a webinar discussion on the theme Action Towards Domesticating the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030, as well as the African Union Agenda 2063. So today we have quite a rich panel, and I would like to introduce this panel, starting with Mr. Tafadzwa Makara, who is a master's student at KU Leuven University, pursuing a master's in sustainability. Mr. Tafadzwa holds also a bachelor's degree in social ecology from the Great Zimbabwe University in Zimbabwe, and he has rich knowledge in issues around sustainable development. So also on our panel, we have Mr. Mnyanyi, who is a master's student with MSU. We have Mr. Mzamwese, who is the chief sustainability consultant at Toxic Council. And we have Mr. Chisina, who is works with Zimbabwe Youth Council. And we have Miss Tabiso Sibanda. So we are going to be further introducing them as we go, as they are going to speak. So at this particular juncture, I would like to cede this time to Mr. Makara to take us straight into his presentation, since we are a bit late in terms of our time. So over to you, Mr. Makara, to run with your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. So how are you, everyone? I'm going to present on the issues of sustainability and the progress that Zimbabwe has managed to reach so far since 2012, when these sustainable development goals were adopted. So I'm going to mainly speak on the progress of the priority SDG for Zimbabwe that Zimbabwe set aside to focus on 10 sustainability goals. So at first, I want to just give a brief introduction of what sustainability is and what the Agenda 2063 is all about. So the shared prosperity and the harmony and solidarity with nature made people to come together in 2012 to design the future we want. That is driven by collaboration, prosperity, and equality for all. So this blueprint of sustainable development, its main focus is to build a better future that is acceptable and viable for all. So as today we face the challenges or the global challenges that includes poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace and justice. So the world see it fits to come together to help fight some of these challenges. So in the same trajectory, the African Union adopted the 2063 agenda is a framework that aims to encourage African countries to deliver inclusive development that reflects the Pan-African vision that is based in unity, freedom, inclusive, and collective prosperity. So Zimbabwe is committed itself to these goals. So in that trajectory, we see that through our constitution, the Constitution of Zimbabwe, the 2013 Constitution of Zimbabwe, that is guided by Sustainable Development Goal, and also that informs the government policy frameworks. So the main emphasis on these goals is main emphasis on goal number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, and 17. So as an attempt to implement and domesticate sustainable development goals in the Agenda 2063, the government understands that building of institutions that works with non-governmental organizations, civil society, and other development partners, and also local, and involving locals in the development agenda is vital. So I will speak mainly on the steps that the government is doing to implement this shared vision in order to attain sustainable livelihoods and sustainable environment, building resilient societies, and empower young people to take part in policy making and come up with policies that are human driven. And also, in the interest of time, I'm just going to reflect on the laws, regulations, and policies that are being implemented today. So, for instance, if you look at the zero hunger, that is sustainable development number 2, the government is aiming to improve nutrition and build sustainable agriculture that will be able to secure the sustainable society. So the government has adopted the zero hunger strategy as a way of intervention in agriculture. We've seen a lot of programs that are coming in, the likes of command agriculture, climate smart agriculture that the government is trying to put into place for us to achieve the goal number 2. But it's also plausible for us to know that the ever-changing environmental conditions have worked against some of these efforts that the government is trying to do. Climate change has really disrupted a lot of things in terms of food security. So a lot still has to be done in agriculture for us to achieve sustainability, to meet these goals by 2030. And also, if you look at goal number 13 on climate action to combat the effects of climate change, we've seen the government of Zimbabwe committed itself in the multilateral international agreements, environmental agreements, the likes of Montreal Protocol, CITES Convention, Paris Agreement, and also locally we've seen the government launching the National Climate Change Response Strategy, the Renewable Energy Policy, the National Adaptation Plan, the Environmental Policy, and also the Forest Policy. All those efforts are put in place by government in order for the country to meet the Sustainable Agenda 2030 and 2063. And in this process, we've seen a lot of the government includes the development partners and non-governmental organizations for them to work together to achieve these goals. And if you look at the goal, for example, sustainable development goal number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. After the realization that well-developed and connected infrastructure is central to the building of comparative industrial capacity, it also promotes industrialization and a viable economy. And the infrastructure is the core of the government's policy and agenda. For example, we've seen from 2012 to 2016, the expansion of the Kariba South project for the government increasing the capacity of the electricity so that the industry is able to have power. Also, the dualization of most of the country's main roads. As you know, that our main transport system network is a road network that links the country with other regional trading hubs like Mozambique, South Africa, Tanzania, and Botswana and Namibia. So I've also seen the commission of the Tokwemkosi Dam, which is also playing a very huge role in Masvingo province. As we know that Masvingo province is under region number 3, which does not thrive much in agriculture without irrigation. So there's a lot of projects that is happening at Tokwemkosi, from fishing projects and also irrigation projects. But also in trying to do all these things, we've seen that the increase in urban population and the rising of informal economy in the country, in most all the cities in the country, has led to several challenges in cities, like urban poverty, inadequate housing, water shortage, electricity shortage, environmental degradation, and a lot of health complications because of the increase in population and also the increase in informal housing settlements that has been happening in the 10 years from the past 10 years in almost all the cities in Zimbabwe. And also some of our infrastructure are very old. Some of the infrastructure are very old. The government will not be able to service some of the things. So the urbanization without infrastructure is seen causing a lot of problems from cholera and other communicable diseases, which hinders the attainment or the progress that the government is trying to make to achieve some of these sustainability goals. So if you can also look at goal number 5 on gender equality, the government has also been trying to work to include gender in the development process. So we've seen the launch of the National Gender Policy, which seeks to bring about equality between men and women in all spheres of life. We've seen the establishment of the Zimbabwe Gender Commission, which is also in the constitution of Zimbabwe. It means it's part of this, driven by the laws of this country. And also in 2016, the Constitutional Court declares child marriage unlawful, which also a stride that the government is trying to make in terms of bringing about gender equality. It also Zimstad reported last year that there are more females in school, in primary and secondary school than men, which is also a success that we can also note on that one. So the laws and policies that have been enacted provide an enabling environment that also reduce issues like domestic gender-based violence and other issues that women continues to face. But also in that trajectory, there's a lot of challenges. So the continuation of some social practices and attitudes is also hinders these prospects of achieving some of these goals. And also, so this constitution, the 2013 constitution, is quite progressive in terms of providing a legal framework that the government can follow to achieve sustainable development goals. We can look at maybe goal number 3 on good health and well-being. The government in section 76 of the constitution grants equal rights for people to access health. And also we've seen a lot of reduction in terms of child mortality and communicable diseases. But also this section of health, also there's still a lot of challenges. Now, because of COVID-19, a lot is also exposed a lot of our institutional incapacity to meet the health demand of the country. So there's still a lot that needs to be done in terms of health, although the legal framework is actually clear and also grants citizens the right to access to health. But also the situation on the ground is also reflect something else. So we can still debate about that one. Also on the education, the government is trying to fund the STEM project that started in 2016 that provides free education to students, high school students in science field. And also the constitution grants free equal access to education and compel the government to provide quality education in public schools, which is a positive remark on education. But its equality and accessibility to everyone on the ground is something that we can still debate about. We can also see from 2017, by the coming of the new government, the government has come up with the ease of doing business reforms that makes business that enable business in enabling business environment for investors to invest, and also the doing business to be easy and accessible to everyone. But also in all these things, we've seen a lot of challenges that happens when it comes to implementation of policies and programs on the ground. So they still need a lot of policy coordination so that this we can meet these goals. We can meet these goals, and also the inclusion of other private sector, non-governmental organizations, union in all these in these efforts. So there's still need of a lot of public awareness on the SDGs to include everyone from local communities, NGOs, unions, government, and development partners. So for now, in conclusion, I can say if the government focuses on these 10 priority goals, I think almost 90% of the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 63 vision of the Africa we want can be a reality. So the government needs to put an effort to implement these goals and keeps on to include collaboration with other international organizations and other regional partners. So despite the domestication and localization efforts that the government is trying to do now to ensure the viability of these goals, they still remain a challenge also on the implementation on the grassroots level. So for now, I can pause for now for questions. And thank you.
So this moment, allow me to call upon Mr. Munyanyi to present on the problems and the challenges that we are facing as means to implement the Agenda 2063 as well as the SDGs. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
No, thank you. Yeah, firstly, I wish to commend the convener of this meeting that engenders a very strategic discourse, a discourse that addresses the futurity of the globe. This is a very, very important session, and I'm glad I've also been invited to partake in such a very, very important platform. Well, I've been asked to give a short briefing of my analysis of government's position on the SDGs and to discuss the key de-accelerating factors that impact on the implementation of the SDGs and Agenda 2030. Now I'm so glad that the majority of the issues that I was going to speak about have been ably covered by my colleague. Thank you for a very thorough and articulate presentation that you gave on the progress that has been made so far. So it covers the better part of my presentation, and as such, I will be very, very brief. You would notice that in his presentation also led clearly the key challenges that have been faced in the bid to implement the SDGs. So indeed, yes, Zimbabwe has committed itself to Agenda 2030 as sustainable development is a very core constitutional imperative and an overall strategic objective for the country. So in this respect, like what my colleague has just said, Zimbabwe has committed itself to implementing all of the SDGs, but with particular emphasis on the 10 that have just been presented on. And yes, the prioritization exercise was guided by quite a number of factors, which include the country's vision, the need to focus on those enabling goals, as well as on resource availability, which has been one of the main and key challenges in the SDGs. As alluded to earlier, there are a number of initiatives government has instituted to stamp its commitment to the SDGs. But I must hasten to clearly indicate that commitment, either through policy, legal, and institutional frameworks, is not sufficient unless it is covered by deliberate macroeconomic fundamentals that are also adequately supported by a fiscal backing from the national budget. Just for interest's sake, for those who might have had the chance to analyze the 2021 budget that has been presented, you will agree with me that the thresholds allocated to key sectors of the economy, like agriculture, which is more like the backbone of our economy, like education, like health, it leaves a lot to be desired. So that fiscal will, that fiscal space needs to be activated if we need to implement effectively the sustainable development goals. Well, there are also quite a number of other factors that bedevil the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, apart from what I've mentioned in terms of the limited physical support. And these might include, linked to this, other political and economic priorities in the country. You'll find policymakers, they will have other areas that they would need to prioritize. There's been an issue of corruption which has been cited at different platforms that has also affected the implementation of the SDGs. Well, key and chief among these de-accelerating factors is climatic change. Well, climatic change is not only one of the SDGs, but a multiplier, a poverty multiplier, a hunger multiplier, and you will see it has affected quite a number of other SDGs. If you were to speak of the SDG number 1, no poverty. SDG number 2, zero hunger. These have been affected critically by climatic change. If we were to talk of SDG number 8, which speaks to economic growth, you'll find agriculture, like I've indicated before, as the key and backbone of the economy of Zimbabwe. It has been grossly affected by climatic change, and hence any prospects of sustainable economic growth are hampered. There's been also the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected almost all the SDGs. It has affected all sectors of the economy. The lockdown that was there, it implied that most industries had to close shop. You would have realized that there are a number of people who have been shed off because of the lockdown measures that have been put in place. And as we speak, there are quite a number of people who have not yet returned back to work because of these challenges. Well, I may go on and on, but it's important that we acknowledge the role that has been played by government so far in terms of trying to spearhead the Sustainable Development Goals through the policy, legal and institutional frameworks that have been put in place. But like I've alluded to before, there is now need to institute physical support so as to effectively implement the Sustainable Development Goals. I think I might have to end here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mnyanyi, for quite an insightful presentation, whereby you clearly articulated the problem that you are facing and that are derailing the attainment of the SDGs. So, as you figure out the solution to this particular challenge that you call upon his presentation, Mr. Zamu, say over to you, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir. We can hear you, sir.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
The organizers of this event, as we look at how we can scale up sustainable development goals, and especially looking at young people. You all know that the Sustainable Development Goals consist of 17 goals and 169 targets. And they represent the aspirations of the world. They succeeded the Millennium Development Goals. And in other circles, the SDGs are referred to as the post-2015 developmental agenda. Already 5 years down the line, there's been a lot of progress that has been made in this country and also at international level. And I would just maybe talk about the relevance of the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, in particular to young people, in particular to climate change. You'd see that most of the Sustainable Development Goals are relevant in our lifetime. And because of time, I'm just going to pick a few of those Sustainable Development Goals and highlighting some of the business opportunities that can be drawn from them. When we look at the SDG number 1 about ending poverty, you will see that in most regions, the young people constitute the large component of the population. And a lot of young people are actually living in poverty. And of course, this poverty is also inherited from the lineage of their families, especially from a developing country perspective. But it is now time we start talking to young people about entrepreneurship, about business development and creating jobs for themselves. For a long time, emphasis was for young people to wait for employment and go to school, get educated, and get an employment. Whilst that is also a key step towards alleviating poverty, we also want to encourage young innovators to come up with good business ideas, commercialize those ideas, and gain revenue from those ideas. Now, you also see the Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which I like so much, which looks at clean and affordable energy. Many countries around with their population, and renewable energy has actually come up as a very good alternative source. You talk about solar energy, you talk about biogas, you talk about wind technology. And of course, in other countries, we've got wave power and geothermal energy. So where are the young people of this world in the energy agenda? The encouragement is for young people to start getting involved in the installation of renewable energy technologies, having solar technicians who are also certified. Instead of young people just being idle, just sitting on bridges, there is a big opportunity for young people to start getting into renewable energy. Also, apart from installation, there are opportunities for operation and maintenance of renewable energy equipment. This could be your solar lights, solar home systems, and also systems at company level. So I don't want to just talk about sustainable development goals in terms of reciting them, but I want to look at business opportunities. The young people who take control of the world or who succeed are those who take their future into their own hands, those who rule their own destiny. We look at climate action itself, that is goal number 13, where now we know that according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, global temperatures will be rising by about 2 degrees Celsius by 2030. If we continue with the business as usual scenario, sea level in some countries will be rising to levels of around 90 centimeters. Malaria band will also increase as a result of climate change. Already, rainfall seasons are shifting. So, given those problems, we need young people to start getting involved in the climate action, implementing climate projects, efficient water utilization, energy efficiency, renewable energy, but also for those young people who are involved in farming, there are opportunities to do with climate smart agriculture. If you're in the farming community as a young person, you need to now adopt adaptation methods which use less water, methods which use drought-resistant crops, and also short season varieties. There are also SDGs that have to deal with innovation and infrastructure. I know quite a number of young people who have now started their own construction companies. and that they are also involved in the construction sector, the road construction, building construction. We know that in 2019, we suffered from Cyclone Idai as a country, you know, in Chimanimani and in Chipinge. Now, the cyclone, as a result of climate change, destroyed infrastructure. And now it is the time for rebuilding. We need young entrepreneurs who also are young contractors to come on board and start bidding for these projects and start getting involved. You would see that the bulk of Africa's population is within the age of the youth. And the challenge that we see is that many youth waste their time by being idle, but also they complain that they do not get enough opportunities. For me, I believe that sometimes it is about time and opportunity. Opportunities arise, but young people are not prepared. Young people are prepared, and then opportunities are not available. The question is, for example, if a young person approaches a bank with a project proposal, is that project proposal bankable when we look at its metrics and its ability to also pay back? So when we look also in the SDGs, we are now looking at the partnership for the goals. If you are going to end poverty, if you are going to achieve sustainable development, if you are going to enhance clean water and sanitation, you need young people with financial literacy. So even if you are in the IT sector, you are in the environmental sector, you are in the human resources sector, or you are in the financial services sector, as long as young people do not have financial literacy, that is a big, big problem. And now there are opportunities with respect to climate finance, which is an area which I want young people to also look at. Climate finance, which is finance that is earmarked to support climate projects, which are projects that reduce emissions. And you've got quite a lot of international institutions that are granting climate finance. Are young people ready to receive climate finance? Are young people ready to receive loans? Are young people ready to receive grants? We have to then change the mindset of our young people to remove the element of consumerism. You know, if you get a loan from a bank to implement a green project, are you going to use it for the right reasons? Are you going to just spend that money for leisure or other things which are not productive? So the future belongs to young people. For me, when I look at the Sustainable Development Goals, I look at business opportunity. When I look at the Sustainable Development Goals, I look at helping society. In closing, what I want to say is that our young people should not just be tree huggers who will talk about sustainability for the sake of protecting resources or for the sake of saving energy. We need to start talking about the language that business people understand, the language that chief executive officers understand, the language that investors understand. It is not about passion, but it is about the idea and the initiative. Can it mobilize resources? And of course, in closing, the other thing which I want to talk about is the movement beyond pilot projects. There are a lot of pilot projects on environmental management. There are a lot of pilot projects on energy efficiency, renewable energy, a lot of pilot projects on ICT. Right now, we are talking about artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence can actually, transform our lives. Now, even when you talk of climate smart agriculture, we must move beyond pilot projects, whether they are conservation of natural resources projects, because on one of the SDGs, we are then looking at life on land. We are also looking at biodiversity. If we are going to do biodiversity projects, implementation, conservation corridors, we need to move beyond pilots, because I believe that pilots are very limited. We need to start talking to young people about scaling up projects from demonstration, scaling up projects from pilot projects, and implement what we call widespread adoption. If we talk of resource efficient and cleaner production, if we talk of efficient production systems, I think that is also what we are talking about. And collaboration is very important. Quite a lot of youths are doing things in silos, working alone on projects, working alone on conservation, working alone on climate change. We need to see young people collaborating with the private sector. We need to see young people collaborating with financial institutions. We need to see young people collaborating with the government. We need to see young people collaborating with academia and researchers. This is the only way that young people can take us forward. So it is my hope that as we implement those sustainable development goals, because we are almost 5 years into them, it's only 10 years which are left. And what more with the COVID-19 crisis, which has really slowed down implementation of the SDGs. The big question which I have, and the biggest doubt which I have is, by 2030, will we have achieved those sustainable development goals? And then where are young people going to be? Are young people going to be able to fully harness the opportunities offered by the Sustainable Development Goals? So thank you very much to the organizers. Thank you so much to those who are following this online. Sustainable development are very critical as a global platform that we can all take from. But young people need to start harnessing those sustainable development. We need to localize them because those are goals which are made at an international level, those 17 goals. When we are talking of renewable energy, access to clean and affordable energy as an SDG, I have done nothing. I'm not talking about installing a solar system in my home. I've done nothing if I'm not promoting adoption of renewable energy in a community. If I talk about clean water and sanitation, I've done nothing if my grandmother is still using the bush system to relieve herself. I've done nothing if my relative does not have access to clean water, which is also potable. So we need to move away from the bookish understanding of the sustainable development goals and then get down to business, get dirty on the SDGs, and also reap the commercial and the financial rewards. Young people should not be parasites and also should not just depend on those who supported them. They have to take responsibility for their future. And when we look at the SDGs, we want to tell young people that the world owes you nothing. Your destiny is actually in your hands. And if you're a young person, take all the 17 SDGs today, write down a business opportunity that can actually arise from each of those sustainable development and get on with it. So my last words is that young people get on with it. We don't want to keep on, doing talk shows or talking about pilot projects. Get on with it. Act within your community and operationalize those SDGs. Thank you very much. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mzamwise, for such an insightful presentation. There you have it, fellas. You have heard him. Young people, we need to take up the space and start acting towards domesticating the SDGs. So at this particular moment, I would like to call upon Ms. Banda, who is going to speak to us about the role of women in the sustainable development agenda. Ms. Banda, over to you.
Hi, Tapiwa, and hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I would appreciate getting heads up, maybe on the chat session. If you can hear me audibly, then I will proceed. So, heads up, you can hear me clearly? Thank you, awesome. Okay, so thank you so much for this opportunity to the organizers, the Innovation Village, and Zimbabwe Youth Council and everyone else really for giving me this opportunity to be part of this platform and to talk about issues to do with women participation and the role of women in terms of domesticating sustainable development goals and the Agenda 2063. I am Tabiso. I work with an organization called Development Agenda for Women and Girls in Africa. Okay, I'm sorry, I've been following the very nice conversations by my fellow panelists, and I'm sorry if I'm going to come as somebody who is going to bash us a little bit or be a prophet of doom. I hope I won't be entirely negative, but I want to say, as we start this discussion, that I don't think that the efforts really to ensure women's participation in terms of attaining SDGs and in terms of the development of the country is really recognized. I'm sorry to use this particular platform for reference, but I think it's necessary that we sometimes do not mince our words and we are people who are able to actually tell each other the truth, to say that initially this was an all-men panel, really, and we are discussing issues to do with women, to do with development, and we are discussing issues to do with domesticating sustainable development goals. And so it goes back now to say that maybe it wasn't really deliberate, but then I want us to look at it from a point where we say, in every other aspect now, at what level do we then recognize the significance or the importance of women participation? At what level, now that we have a whole platform that has been organized, planned and everything, and then at last minute, like, at what point do we see that this looks wrong, the fact that women are not part of it or they are not participating? Then at what level are we then really saying we are engaging women, really? So I think it's something that we really need to reflect upon if we're going to make deliberate efforts to ensure that women are part of each and every process of development in our country. Otherwise, without women's participation and their input, then we are not doing anything, right? So anyway, I would like to talk about the subject of the day in terms of how women play a role in terms of domesticating the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2023. If we look at it, the topic that I was given talks about how we can enhance women's participation in times of crisis. And we are, as a country, in a place where there is a lot of anomalies in terms of economic issues and in terms of social well-being of the citizens. If we look at sustainable development goals, really, you see that most of them really, they are directly impacting on women's lives. If we want to take it from issues to do with poverty, let's look at how poverty affects women and children in Zimbabwe. Let's look at the issues that actually contribute to us having these high rates of poverty amongst women, and how women have limited access to economic opportunities. This could be due to a lot of factors to do with the patriarchal society that we still exist in. This could be a factor that is contributed by the fact that when it comes to access to issues like loans and so forth, we still have those collateral issues whereby women are really not property owners and so forth and so forth. And we look at issues to do with zero hunger. How does it affect women and children? When we talk about good health and well-being, how does issues of having a health system delivery that is non-functional affect women? If we look at issues to do with health, we look at how women have challenges in terms of accessing maternal, neonatal child health services, sexual reproductive health, and how those actually affect women more than they do affect men. So it actually means that we need to make sure that if we are going to talk about domesticating the SDGs, if we are going to talk about development, we need to put women and children at the center of every other conversation that we are going to have.
talk of quality education, let's look at how, fine, I want to acknowledge that there have been educational reforms and policies that are really pro women's education, which is a step in the right direction, but we still have some elements behind which make education in terms, when we look at women and men, to say that the opportunities might not really necessarily be that equal. And we look at going to SDG number 5, gender equality. How far are we going as a nation really in terms of wanting to getting closer to attaining gender equality? And what are spaces available for? Are there spaces for women really for them to take part and also make significant contributions towards national building and development? We talk about clean water and sanitation. I would like to reference the water challenges that the country's cities are facing and how this actually affects women. We talk about issues to do with decent work and economic growth. Like I said before, to say what opportunities are there for women, right? What in terms of reduced inequalities? We want to also look at urban women and rural women. What opportunities are there for them to be able to also contribute to national development, really, you know? So I think we really need to get to a point where we actually look at how all of these SDGs affect women, and how we can then put women at the center of having those conversations, and how we can put women at the center of development. In terms of empowerment, I really want to acknowledge that there has been really efforts to ensure that women are empowered in different capacities, really. We have programs within the ministries of women. Actually, it's a good best practice that we have an entire ministry that is focusing on the needs of women. But I think we really need to get to a point where we understand that we need more. There is more that we need as women than what has been done so far. So in terms of women empowerment, I would like to say that I'm not saying that capacity building is no longer necessary. It's very necessary, and it's very relevant, looking at the fact that we still have young generations of women that are growing. We still have very marginalized communities, really. But at the end of the day, we have groups of women that have been over-workshopped, that have been over-empowered, and so forth and so forth. At the end of the day, when it comes to them to say, where are the opportunities for women? We do not have those spaces. We do not have those opportunities to say, okay, now that resources have been put into empowering women, then how can we make sure that the nation also benefits from the gains of capacity building and empowering women? There is really limited space. If we look at the one of the aspirations of the Agenda 2063 on good governance, democracy, and respect for human rights and justice and political participation, are we saying that we are satisfied by the role that women are playing in political spaces? And really, is the political space friendly enough for women to take part in, you know? So those are some of the conversations that we really need to look at, to say, beyond the SMEs, beyond the small agricultural or ISALs and cooperatives, what other spaces can women contribute in? We want to see women in ICT excelling. We want to see women excelling in mining. We want to see women excelling in industry and commerce. We want to see women in finance, in the finance ministry. So it's not enough to really I don't want to be misquoted to say that we are not appreciative of the economic empowerment projects that are there, looking at the SMEs and the informal, but we also want to see women taking up critical spaces within the government ministries, really, to see to what do women have to bring to the table, right? Somebody in some conversation talked about how we have the quota system in terms of parliament as a window. I want to say that as a woman, and I hope that fellow women who are actually listening in would also agree with me, to say we need more than a window. Really, we need doors. We need to be able to have, we don't just need a seat on the table. We also need to set the table. We also need to be part of the initial agenda. Who sets the agenda for development. And we also want to see women taking critical positions in those spaces. So that's what I would actually want to say for now, but I really want to appreciate some of the opportunities that women have been given in terms of empowerment, and also some progressive policies, like the first speaker talked about issues to do with outlawing of child marriages, ensuring that there's equal access to education for girls and boys, issues to do with equal pay for equal work, maternity paid leave for women, and all the other progressive policies that we have done towards ensuring that women have got a safe space to policy dialogue, and women have got a safe space to participation. But I still feel like we have a long way to go, as long as we still remember the importance of the role of women at a later stage of whatever it is that we're doing. That it means that we really haven't gotten there. We really need to start reflecting on how we can ensure that women are also part and parcel of every initiative, of every development initiative from the initial stages. Really. So moderator, that's my contribution for now. And yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Sibanda, to include women from everything so that we can realize sustainable development. We really appreciate your concern as women, and we as organizers would like to concede that the space one or the other has been shrinking and men have been taking over, and we really appreciate your contribution as women, especially as young women, in foreseeing development in you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call upon our last presenter, who is Mr. Chisina from the Zimbabwe Youth Council.
Afternoon, colleagues. If I can get... okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And yeah, it has been a great day and a busy one for that matter. You know, with these Zoom meetings, COVID has been creating a lot of challenges, but we are getting there. We have been in 3 or so meetings, but network has been a challenge. At least I got to hear the previous 2 speakers speaking about speaking passionately about SDGs, and the last speaker before myself, Tabiso. I acknowledge the concerns as well as the issues that have been raised. We are in a journey, and mainstreaming gender is a process, and I acknowledge that we learn every day, and we should be correcting some of the mistakes as we go. Thank you very much for the passionate presentation. Mine is going to be very short, but I appreciate that a lot of you and other colleagues could have read through what I'm going to present on, and could have got comments from your communities, societies, groups. It has been a talk of the 2 weeks after the launch of the National Development Strategy #1. The background of it being that it has been a 2-year transitional stabilization program, then coming to the end in 2020, birthing the National Development Strategy #1. For me, in terms of government planning, this is what I'm just going to talk about, mainly to say young people should be conversant with government planning. When we heard of the TSP, Transitional Stabilization Program, and now the National Development Strategy, from 2-year planning to 5-year planning. I say congratulations to the government of Zimbabwe for taking the nation to focus, and also with the vision 2030. I would also say this is an opportunity for young people. Look at the ministers that are planning. Be part of the planning process. Now we are unpacking the National Development Strategy. We are also unpacking the 2021 national budget. And it has been noted that this strategy is going to be financed by 5 budgets. And the second phase of the strategy, which is number 2, is going to be also financed by the 5 budgets towards a vision which has been spelled out for us. I would say the vision 2030 is for us. Let's not leave it to the older generation to decide what we will be like in 2030. But let's take the initiative. I acknowledge what the speaker before, Travis, was talking about in terms of youth grabbing the opportunity, youth being the champions of your destiny, not waiting for the government to do things for you, but when the government shapes the future like it has done now with the National Development Strategy, it's upon us to identify opportunities. When United Nations gave nods or thumbs up to the SDGs, it's now upon us to identify which SDG am I familiar with, which SDG would I want to explore. So it's an issue of opportunity-seeking behavior that I think young people should take most of it. In the National Development Strategy, number 1, I would just want to focus on 3 issues that has been identified, which are mainly talking to the youth sector. It's said, and but it's challenging to note that the NDS1 has acknowledged that the youth, in their generality, they lack a culture of hard, honest work. It's in black and white. On chapter 24, it's black and white. It has been spelled out to the nation that young people of Zimbabwe, they lack a culture of hard, honest work. So they really need to be taught on how to develop a culture of hard, honest work. So it has been put out there that as young people, this is who we are. And this is how government has identified you, has seen you. Not saying there are some who are hardworking, but in essence, they're just saying the majority of young people, they lack this culture of hard, honest work. They, in putting it in a layman's words, they opt for instant opportunities or instant things. So the government went forward to identify agriculture, mining, and tourism as the 3 productive sectors that they will focus on during this 5-year period. I would say it's an awakening realization to say that we cannot go anywhere as a nation if we don't pursue productive sectors first. So it's sort of going back to basics in terms of planning. And just look around you as a young person. What opportunities are around you? Without thinking of exporting the opportunity, have you managed to satisfy the local market? Have you managed to satisfy the society? Have you also managed to solve the societal problems that are around you? Someone was talking of access to water. access to electricity, power. So I acknowledge that, and I really think that's the starting point. If your grandmother is still battling with accessing electricity and you have not started a solar business, then our thinking has to be redirected somehow. If we think of participating in the international forums, but we have not organized a meeting with the local people, the local society, the local village, how are we going to make impact at international level? Yes, we aim to be part of international panels, but have we satisfied the local market? So the NDS one have realized that also, I think because of COVID-19 and the restrictions, the lockdown, it's an issue of intrinsic thinking, localizing things. The government has started to realize that we cannot go anywhere without producing for our local need. Let's satisfy locally. Let's do agriculture. They've launched the Fumvuza, they've launched the horticulture program, they've launched the livestock program. As young people, where are we when these programs are happening within our localities? Those ones in agriculture. It's not that you need to own a piece of land, but whatever is closer to you, have you managed to utilize it in a way that is going to satisfy the society, the local community? You will make impact to the local community. So mine is not that presentation which is going to say government is aiming to achieve this. I'm just saying let's localize whatever we want to do as young people. If, for example, we have 10 young people in a village who would want to set goals for the next 5 years. And I think that's one challenge that we have also. And that is going to, that we need to really look at ourselves to see if we are able to plan together with the government. If government has planned for a 5-year program, a 10-year program, so it's left to you now to also plan accordingly. In terms of 5-year, 10-year program, what is your 10-year vision? Government has said Vision 2030, attaining a middle class income status by 2030. What about you as a young person? So that your vision will rhyme with the government vision. So this NDS one has actually given us an opportunity to plan 5 years from now, 10 years from now, in accordance with the Vision 2030. Some are saying we don't have the middle class in Zimbabwe, but where do you place yourself as a young person? Which sector are you going to pursue for the next 5 years when government is saying we have put in place measures to ensure that agriculture is going to give us certain amount in terms of GDP contribution, mining is going to give us certain billions of dollars, tourism is going to give us this in terms of recovery from COVID-19. Where are you putting yourself as a young person? So most of my presentation will be sort of questions to say, relook, rethink, and see how best you can realign your priorities together with government priorities. Now, looking at the institutional frameworks that are available, we have the ministry responsible for youth, we have youth agencies with the Youth Council, we have youth organizations, we have the parliament. Which organization do you interact with more? So that your priorities are also aligned to certain institutions that are mandated to do in line with what you have prioritized. If you prioritize agriculture or digital economy or ICTs, are you in touch with the relevant departments that are pursuing that same agenda? So that's what you need also to think. Now we are talking of the National Youth Act. Where do you see yourself as a young person? Because youth is an age bracket of the youth bracket. You are above 35. What will be your plan? So we need to think ahead. We need to think long-term, medium-term. So the government has given us a generational focus in terms of planning. So we need to follow the direction that the government has been planning on, so that we also align ourselves around that. And they've given us a futuristic view of things to say by 2030, we will be doing this and this and that. What is your futuristic view of things? Then also in terms of succession in planning, I was talking now of what will you do after 35 years? What will be your shift? What will be your mandate? They've talked of TSP to NDS1, NDS2, and Vision 2030. That's what we need to do as young people, individually or as a group. I thank Innovation Village for giving us this opportunity to share. Just to share a few, you might have read in the NDS1 that the ministry responsible for youth will be focusing on establishing youth indirect centers, establishing youth leadership programs, establish youth empowerment programs, and they've already been given a budget for that. Have you aligned yourselves towards that particular outcomes or programs that have been set out by the relevant ministry? Identify an opportunity and run with it. I would want not to take much time, but I would say, as young people, let's be realistic and engage. Being realistic just means, from the initial discussion that I had, I was talking of your representation, your impact at local level. In the village where you live, where you stay, what are the opportunities around? Have you identified one or two opportunities that you can run with? Going back to basics, government has taught us that we really need to think of production. We cannot be a nation that depends on imports. Let's produce. When we certify the local market, then we can export. Then let's choose a path to follow. We have 17 SDGs. You cannot pursue all of them. NDS1 have laid out about 13 priority areas. You cannot pursue all of them. Choose a niche and focus on that particular niche. Then look at institutions that can support your vision around that particular niche. If you want to ensure that societies benefit from a healthy nation, so you pursue the SDG that is aligned to health, provision of health care. That particular path, and walk that path effectively. You cannot be a jack of all trades. Try to focus, try to choose a path and a niche which you can pursue. I think I will leave this time for questions so that we have a wider presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Once again, my apologies for coming in late because of network challenges.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chisina. It's such quite an insightful presentation, challenging us as young people to start our conference within our nation content for us to domesticate the SDG agenda as well as the African Union agenda. So at this particular moment, I would like to call upon our attendees, our participants. If you have questions for the panelists, please, you can use the raise your hand option or use the chat box so that we can read them out and let our panelists respond. Thank you. Do you have any takers? Wow, this to me, this means a lot. This means that our panelists have done a great job, or it means otherwise. So at this moment, I would like just to give this opportunity to our panelists to give us their closing remarks, their closing statements, starting with Mr. Makara and what he thinks needs to be done, since we have actually pointed out the problems that we face within our societies and the way forward. Over to you, Mr. Makara. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, hello, sorry, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, it's fine now, right?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I was saying, I don't have much to say, but from what the other speakers have been saying is this SDG is a journey that we have to do, and in that traveling, also have to identify our own actions that we can do as individuals, as small communities, because for me, I believe that is what is most global is most local. What is most local is most global. So let's try to just localize our small action contributing to this shared agenda, because maybe I think there's this narrative, or maybe thinking that this sustainable development has to come from government or to come from somewhere. So I think all the actions or our action that we do in our communities can make a huge difference and find our place as young people in the sustainable development goal. I think this is our time that we have to take up the challenge and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makara. Over to you, Mr. Munyanyi, if you're still in the house.
Well, I think the discussion was quite profound. Having heard all the other presenters making their submissions, I think I'm quite content. I'm quite glad about the discussion that we have had. This should just but be a starting point. I think if we can have even more for us to do with sustainable development, because indeed development should be able to meet the current needs without actually bedeviling the prospect of future generations. With that, I rest my submission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mnyanyi. We'll give this time to Mr. Mzamwese if he's still in the house. Okay, I think Mr. Mzamwese is no longer with us in the house. This time I'll give an opportunity to Ms. Sibanda to give us a closing remarks.
Okay, I think I just like to reiterate what I said before, to say that we need to make deliberate efforts to ensure that women are equally participating in key spaces, and we need to ensure that we recognize the role of women leadership in terms of development. And when we are going to be domesticating sustainable development goals, we are looking at Agenda 2030, and we are at what United Nations terms as a decade of action. So it's not really too late to right the wrongs. Let's look at what we can do during the decade of action to ensure that by the time we get to 2030, we would have made deliberate strides to ensure that women are taking up space. And us as women also, we need to be proactive in demanding, in advocating and lobbying for us to be recognized in key spaces. Sometimes, people will not, it's not every other time where we need to be called to be part of something, but we also need to look at it from a point whereby we are affected by a lot of economic crisis that is happening in this country. So we really need to ensure that we are part of, we're not just part of pointing out the crisis, but we're also part of the solution table. So that's what I'm going to encourage every fellow woman. And I would want also to say to everyone here that we should all be feminists, Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for quite strong remarks that we need to be proactive, we need to take action. So without further ado, let me call upon Mr. Chisina to give us his closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity once again. And Tabiso, thank you for the toned conclusion. Okay, so I would say, as young people, I think let's look for information and appropriate information. There's a lot of information out there. I have been working with young people for some time now. Some of them would just say from the blue, we have heard that this is not working, but they've not really consulted the actual implementers. They have not gone to the bank to look for financing, but they just conclude to say, as young people, we have failed to access funding. So let's look for information. Also, let's be part of research. Only when we do research, even in your smallest market, in your smallest community, look for areas of intervention, then we can be able to develop. And I would say we are the generation that will make things happen. Therefore, let's prove to the leaders that we are indeed change and impact makers. We can do it. And this can only be done by action, our action, which can speak more than the forums that we are having. Let's have tangible impact on the ground. And when you see documents by government, please, let's take time to read through and digest, look for opportunities within those voluminous documents. I have shared with young people the National Development Strategy, and they're saying 333 pages. How are we going to go through this particular document? Can we have a summarized one? But I was encouraging them to say, no, take time. This is a 5-year plan. Take your time to invest in the 5 years by just going through the document for a day. Then you are done. It's an investment. So a culture of reading and digesting documents, I think it should be part of us as young people as we move forward. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much to our panelists for gracing this occasion. We had planned to live stream on Facebook. Unfortunately, due to network challenges, we didn't make it, but we are going to make an effort to share the recording of this session so that people can actually go through it. And also keep on engaging with us on Facebook. We are Innovation Village for Young African Minds. Keep on engaging with us. And at this moment, we would like to thank the Zimbabwe Youth Council for agreeing to work with us on giving youth the voice and discussing issues that are pertinent to the development of our nation. And we would also like to thank Toxic Consultants for giving us an opportunity to work with them. And also on another note, Toxic Council is a magazine, that is the Green Magazine. You can look for it. It has spaces to advertise and what they are doing. And also the magazine covers on issues around sustainability. So I think that's a very must-read magazine for young people. And also Mr. Mzamwez is an author of a book called How to Become a Consultant. So I think we can go into those books and have a great day. And thank you very much for taking out of your time to be with us in this seminar. We are looking forward to future engagements, and we're looking forward that we are going to do the right thing as we go through. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we like to end this seminar. Thank you very much and goodbye.